What I'm about to tell you will change how you think about miracles forever. A newborn baby, abandoned in the darkness of a dangerous forest where wild animals hunt at night. But what happened next shocked an entire community and proved that sometimes guardian angels come in the most unexpected forms. If this story moves you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end, because what happens will leave you speechless. Deep in the heart of rural Georgia, where pine forests stretch for miles and Spanish moss hangs like curtains from ancient oak trees, the small town of Pine Ridge had always been a quiet place. Population 3,200. The kind of town where everyone knows everyone, where church bells ring every Sunday morning, and where secrets don't stay hidden for long. But on the night of October 15th, 2019, Pine Ridge would witness something that would be talked about for generations. The storm hit around 9 p.m. Weather reports had warned of severe thunderstorms, but nobody expected the fury that unleashed itself that night. Lightning split the sky like cracks in broken glass. Thunder rolled across the hills like the footsteps of giants. Rain came down in sheets, so thick you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. Most folks in Pine Ridge were smart enough to stay indoors. They locked their doors, unplugged their electronics, and waited for the storm to pass. But nature has its own plans, and that night, nature had something incredible in store. At the edge of town, where Maple Street turns into Old Mill Road, sits a modest 2-story house with faded blue shutters and a wraparound porch. This was the home of Margaret Maggie Thompson, a 67-year-old retired nurse who had spent 40 years caring for others at Pine Ridge General Hospital. Maggie had been widowed 3 years earlier when her husband Robert passed from a heart attack. Her son David, 42, had moved back home to help take care of her, though she insisted she was perfectly capable of taking care of herself, thank you very much. That night, as the storm raged outside, Maggie was doing what she did every night before bed, reading her Bible and saying her prayers. She had just finished reading Psalm 23 when something made her stop, a feeling, not a sound, not a sight, but a feeling deep in her chest, like someone was calling her name, but she couldn't hear the voice. She closed her Bible and walked to the window. The rain was coming down so hard she couldn't see her own mailbox, but the feeling wouldn't go away. If anything, it was getting stronger. "Lord," she whispered, "what are you trying to tell me?" Maggie tried to shake off the feeling. She made herself a cup of chamomile tea, thinking it would calm her nerves, but as she sat in her rocking chair, sipping the warm tea and listening to the storm, the feeling only grew stronger. It was like someone was pulling at her heart, urging her to go somewhere. But where? And in this weather? She thought about waking David, but he had to work early the next morning at the construction site. He needed his sleep. Besides, how could she explain this feeling? It sounded crazy even to her. At 11:30 p.m., Maggie couldn't ignore it anymore. She put on her yellow raincoat, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped out into the storm. The wind nearly knocked her over. Rain stung her face like tiny needles. Any sane person would have turned around and gone back inside, but Maggie Thompson had learned to trust her instincts over 4 decades of nursing, and her instincts were screaming at her now. She walked down Maple Street, her flashlight beam dancing in the rain. She didn't know where she was going, but somehow her feet did. They carried her past the Johnson's house, past the old gas station, and toward the forest preserve that bordered the town. Pine Ridge Forest. Preserve was 500 acres of dense woodland, hiking trails and wildlife. During the day, it was beautiful. Families came here for picnics, hikers explored the trails, and bird watchers sat quietly hoping to spot rare species. But at night, especially on a night like this, it was dangerous. Black bears had been spotted in the area, coyotes hunted in these woods, and in weather like this, even the most experienced hiker could get lost and never find their way out. Maggie knew all this, but something was calling her into those woods, and she couldn't ignore it. The forest was even darker than the town. The thick canopy of trees blocked out what little light came from the storm clouds above. Maggie's flashlight beam seemed tiny and weak against the massive darkness surrounding her. She followed what looked like a deer path, pushing through wet branches and stepping over fallen logs. Her shoes were soaked through. Her raincoat kept most of the rain off, but water still found its way down her neck and up her sleeves. "Lord, I hope you know what you're doing," she muttered, "because I sure don't." She'd been walking for about 20 minutes when she heard it. At first she thought it was just the wind through the trees, but then she heard it again, and her blood ran cold. It was crying, a baby's cry. But that was impossible. Who would bring a baby out here on a night like this? She must be hearing things. The storm was playing tricks on her mind. But then she heard it again. Weaker this time, but definitely a baby crying. Maggie quickened her pace, following the sound. Her heart was pounding now, not from the walk, but from fear. If there really was a baby out here, it was in terrible danger. The crying was coming from up ahead, somewhere off the main path. Maggie pushed through a tangle of bushes, thorns catching on her raincoat, and emerged into a small clearing. That's when she saw it. At the base of a large oak tree, partially hidden by fallen leaves and debris, was a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. The blanket was soaked through and muddy, but Maggie could see tiny arms moving inside it. "Oh my God," she whispered, rushing forward. She knelt down and carefully lifted the bundle. Inside was a baby girl no more than a few days old. Her skin was pale and cold to the touch. Her lips had a bluish tint. She was barely breathing, but she was alive. Maggie's nursing instincts kicked in immediately. She quickly unzipped her raincoat and pulled the baby inside, using her own body heat to warm the child. The baby's breathing was shallow and rapid, signs of hypothermia. "It's okay, sweetheart," Maggie whispered. "I've got you now. You're going to be okay." But even as she said the words, she wondered if they were true. How long had this baby been out here? How had she survived this long in the cold and rain? Maggie needed to get the baby to a hospital immediately. She stood up, cradling the infant against her chest, and started to head back toward the path. That's when she heard the growling. The sound came from behind her, low and menacing. Maggie slowly turned around, her flashlight beam sweeping across the clearing. Two yellow eyes reflected back at her from the darkness. Then she saw the shape. A large coyote, standing about 30 feet away. Its head was low, ears back, teeth bared. Maggie's heart stopped. Coyotes were normally afraid of humans, but this one looked different. Hungry, desperate, and with a helpless baby in her arms, Maggie was vulnerable. She remembered her husband Robert's advice from years ago. If you ever encounter a wild animal, don't run. Make yourself look big, make noise, and back away slowly. But with a dying baby in her arms, her options were limited. The coyote took a step forward, then another. Maggie looked around desperately. The oak tree behind her was old and massive, with low branches that might be climbable. It was her only chance. Moving slowly, never taking her eyes off the coyote, Maggie backed toward the tree. The animal matched her movement, staying the same distance away, but clearly preparing to attack. When she reached the tree, Maggie grabbed the lowest branch with one hand while keeping the baby pressed against her chest with the other. Adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she had. Somehow, she managed to pull herself up to the first branch, then the second. The coyote circled the base of the tree, looking up at her with those yellow eyes. It let out a howl that sent chills down Maggie's spine. Then it settled down to wait. Maggie sat on that tree branch for what felt like hours, holding the baby close to her body, trying to keep them both warm and dry. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the wind was still strong enough to make the tree sway. The baby had stopped crying, which worried Maggie more than the crying had. She checked the infant's pulse, weak but steady. Her breathing was still shallow. She needed medical attention desperately. "Come on, little one," Maggie whispered. "Stay with me. Help is coming." But how? Nobody knew where she was. David wouldn't discover she was missing until morning, and even then would he think to look in the forest. The coyote was still there, pacing around the base of the tree. Occasionally it would look up at her and bare its teeth, as if reminding her that it wasn't going anywhere. Maggie tried her cell phone, but there was no signal this deep in the woods. She was truly alone with a dying baby and a predator waiting below. That's when she started to pray. Lord, I don't know why you led me out here, but I trust there's a reason. This little girl needs help and I can't give it to her stuck up in this tree. Please, show me what to do. As if in answer to her prayer, she heard voices in the distance. Faint at first, but getting closer. Mom, where are you? It was David. David had woken up around 2 a.m. and noticed his mother's bedroom light was still on. When he went to check on her, he found her bed empty and her raincoat missing. Despite the storm, he had driven around town looking for her, calling her name. When that didn't work, he called his friend Mike, a volunteer with the Pine Ridge Fire Department. Within an hour, they had a search party of 12 people. It was Mike who suggested checking the forest preserve. You know your mum, he said. She's always been drawn to nature, and in her state of mind, David didn't want to think about what state of mind his mother might be in. Since his father's death, she had been different, sadder, more withdrawn. Had she come out here to... He pushed the thought away and focused on the search. They had been calling her name for over an hour when they finally heard her voice calling back from deep in the woods. David, over here, help! The search party followed the sound of her voice, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. When they reached the clearing, they saw Maggie sitting in the oak tree, holding something in her arms. Mom, what are you doing up there? David called out. There's a coyote down there, Maggie replied, and I have a baby up here who needs help right now. The men shined their lights around the clearing until they spotted the coyote, which had retreated to the edge of the woods but was still watching them. Mike, who had hunting experience, fired a warning shot into the air. The coyote bolted into the darkness. Two of the men helped Maggie down from the tree while David took the baby. Even in the dim light, he could see how pale and cold the infant was. We need to get her to a hospital now, Maggie said. She's been out here for hours. The nearest hospital was Pine Ridge General, where Maggie had worked for 40 years. Dr. Sarah Williams, the emergency room physician on duty, was one of Maggie's former colleagues. When they rushed through the ER doors with the baby, Dr. Williams took one look and immediately called for a pediatric team. The baby was suffering from severe hypothermia, dehydration, and exposure. How long was she out there? Dr. Williams asked as they worked to stabilize the infant. I found her around midnight, Maggie replied, but I don't know how long she'd been there before that. The next few hours were critical. The baby's body temperature was dangerously low. Her blood sugar had dropped to life-threatening levels. In any normal circumstances, a newborn wouldn't have survived what this little girl had been through. But somehow, she was fighting. By dawn, her condition had stabilized. Her temperature was rising. Her breathing was stronger. The bluish tint had left her lips. It's a miracle, Dr. Williams told Maggie. Another hour out there, and we would have lost her. But the miracle wasn't over yet. It was just beginning. News of the abandoned baby spread quickly through Pine Ridge. By the time the morning news aired, reporters were already at the hospital asking questions. Who was this baby? Where did she come from? Why was she abandoned in the forest? The police launched an immediate investigation. Detective Lisa Rodriguez, who had been with the Pine Ridge Police Department for 15 years, took the lead on the case. In a town this small, someone has to know something, she told her partner, Detective James Murphy. Babies don't just appear out of nowhere. They started by checking recent births at local hospitals. Pine Ridge General had delivered 3 babies in the past week, but all 3 were accounted for. They expanded their search to neighboring counties. Meanwhile, Maggie refused to leave the baby's side. The hospital staff, who all knew and respected her, allowed her to stay in the pediatric ward. What are you going to call her? Asked Susan Martinez, one of the nurses. Maggie looked down at the sleeping infant. Despite everything she had been through, the baby was beautiful. She had dark hair, long eyelashes, and when she was awake, the brightest blue eyes Maggie had ever seen. Hope, Maggie said without hesitation. Her name is Hope. Word of baby Hope, as she became known throughout Pine Ridge, touched the hearts of everyone in the community. People began showing up at the hospital with donations, baby clothes, diapers, formula, blankets. The local churches organized prayer vigils. The Pine Ridge Elementary School held a fundraiser. Even the high school football team dedicated their next game to baby Hope. But it was Maggie who became the baby's unofficial guardian. She was there for every feeding, every diaper change, every medical checkup. The hospital staff joked that she was working more hours now than when she was actually employed there. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Williams said one day, "you know you don't have to do this. Child Services will find her a good home." Maggie looked up from the rocking chair where she was feeding Hope her bottle. "Doctor, I didn't find this baby by accident. God led me to her for a reason. I may be 67 years old, but I've got a lot of love left to give." 3 days after Hope was found, Detective Rodriguez got the break she was looking for. The call came from Macon, Georgia, about 150 miles south of Pine Ridge. A young woman named Jessica Chen had contacted the police there, saying she had given birth 3 days ago, but her baby was missing. Jessica's story was heartbreaking. She was 19 years old, a college student who had hidden her pregnancy from her strict parents. When she went into labor, she had driven to a hospital in another county to avoid being discovered. After giving birth, Jessica had fallen asleep from exhaustion. When she woke up, her baby was gone. The hospital had no record of the birth. Jessica had used a fake name and paid in cash. But the most shocking part of the story was what Jessica told Detective Rodriguez next. "My boyfriend Tyler, he was angry when he found out about the baby," Jessica said through tears. "He said he wasn't ready to be a father. He said the baby would ruin our lives. I thought he was just scared, but then..." Tyler Harrison, 21, had confessed to taking the baby while Jessica slept. He had driven north intending to drop the infant at a fire station or hospital, but panic had set in. Instead, he had driven to a remote area and left the baby in the woods. "I thought someone would find her," Tyler told police. "I never meant for her to get hurt." When Jessica learned that her baby was alive and safe in Pine Ridge, she immediately drove to the hospital. The reunion between mother and daughter was emotional, but it was also complicated. Jessica was young, scared, and had no support system. She was in her second year of college with no money and no job. Her parents had disowned her when they learned about the pregnancy. "I want what's best for her," Jessica told Maggie through tears, "but I don't know if I can give her what she needs." Maggie held the young woman's hands. "Honey, being a mother isn't about having money or the perfect situation. It's about love, and I can see how much you love her." Over the next few days, Jessica visited Hope every day. She would hold her, feed her, and talk to her about everything and nothing, but Maggie could see the conflict in the young woman's eyes. On the 5th day, Jessica made a decision that would change all their lives. "Mrs. Thompson," Jessica said, "can I ask you something?" They were sitting in the hospital room, watching Hope sleep in her crib. The baby had gained weight and was growing stronger every day. "Of course, dear. Do you believe in signs? Like, do you think God sends us messages?" Maggie smiled. "Honey, I found your daughter in the middle of a forest during a thunderstorm because something told me to go walking in the rain. Yes, I believe in signs." Jessica nodded. "I've been praying about what to do, and I keep coming back to the same thing. You found her. You saved her. Maybe that wasn't an accident." "What are you saying, Jessica?" "I'm saying I want you to adopt her. I want you to be her mother." The words hung in the air between them. Maggie felt her heart skip a beat. "Jessica, I'm 67 years old. Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love her, but I can barely take care of myself. You've already been taking care of her since the moment you found her, and I can see how much you love her too." The adoption process wasn't simple. There were legal procedures to follow, social workers to convince, and paperwork to file. Some people questioned whether a 67-year-old woman should be allowed to adopt a newborn, but the Pine Ridge community rallied around Maggie. Letters of support poured in from former patients, colleagues, and neighbors. Dr. Williams wrote a glowing recommendation. Even the judge who had handled her husband's estate spoke on her behalf. "Your Honor," Maggie told the family court judge during the final hearing, "I know I'm not young. I know this isn't a conventional situation, but I have love to give, experience to share, and most importantly, this baby needs me as much as I need her." Jessica stood up in the courtroom. "Your Honor, Mrs. Thompson saved my daughter's life. If she's willing to save it again by giving her a loving home, then I can't think of anyone better to raise her." 6 months after Hope was found in the forest, the adoption was finalized. Margaret Thompson officially became the mother of Hope Chen Thompson. The years that followed were some of the happiest of Maggie's life. Hope grew into a bright, curious, and loving child. She had her mother's intelligence and her adoptive grandmother's compassion. David, who had initially worried about his mother taking on such a huge responsibility at her age, became the doting uncle. He taught Hope to ride a bike, helped with her homework, and scared away any boys who showed interest when she got older. The community continued to embrace Hope as one of their own. She was the flower girl at 3 different weddings, starred in the church Christmas pageant every year, and won the Pine Ridge Elementary School spelling bee 2 years in a row. But it was the annual tradition that Maggie started that became most special. Every October 15th, on the anniversary of the night Hope was found, Maggie would take her daughter to the edge of Pine Ridge Forest. They would sit on a blanket and have a picnic, and Maggie would tell Hope the story of how they found each other. "Were you scared, Mama?" Hope would ask. "A little," Maggie would admit. "But I knew God had a plan. He always does." As Hope entered her teenage years, she began to ask more questions about her birth parents. Maggie had always been honest about Hope's adoption, but now Hope wanted to know more details. "Do you think my birth mother ever thinks about me?" Hope asked on her 13th birthday. Maggie chose her words carefully. "I think any mother who gave birth to someone as wonderful as you would think about you every day. Do you think I could meet her someday? If that's something you want when you're older, we can explore that option." Jessica had moved to Atlanta after the adoption and had finished college with a degree in social work. She had never tried to contact Hope directly, respecting Maggie's role as the child's mother, but she had sent a letter every year on Hope's birthday through the adoption agency. When Hope turned 16, Maggie decided it was time to share those letters. Hope read through 16 letters from Jessica, each one filled with love, regret, and hope for the future. Jessica had graduated college, gotten married to a kind man named David, not Uncle David, she was careful to note, and had become a social worker specializing in teen mothers. "She sounds nice," Hope said after reading the most recent letter. "She is," Maggie replied. "She was just very young and very scared when you were born. Do you think she would want to meet me?" Maggie had been expecting this question for years. "I think she would love to meet you, but only if that's what you want and only when you're ready." Before we continue, if you've made it this far and haven't subscribed yet, why not? We pour our heart into every video, and your one click means more than you know. Subscribe and share. It's the fuel that keeps us going. Let's continue. Hope thought about it for a few weeks. Finally, she made her decision. "I want to meet her, but I want you there too. You're my real mom. She's just the person who gave birth to me." Maggie felt tears come to her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't know how happy that makes me." The meeting was arranged for Hope's 17th birthday. Jessica, now 36, drove up from Atlanta with her husband Mark and their 2 young children, Hope's half-siblings. They met at the same park where Maggie used to take Hope for picnics when she was little. It was awkward at first, but Hope's natural warmth and Jessica's genuine love for her daughter made the conversation flow. "You're so beautiful," Jessica told Hope, tears in her eyes. "And so smart. Mrs. Thompson, you've done an amazing job raising her. Please, call me Maggie. And you did a good job too, bringing her into this world and making the brave choice to let me love her." Hope got to meet her half-siblings, a 5-year-old boy named Michael and a 3-year-old girl named Sarah. They were shy at first, but soon Hope was pushing them on the swings and helping them feed the ducks. "I have a big sister," Michael announced proudly to anyone who would listen. As Hope prepared for her senior year of high school, she had big dreams. She wanted to study medicine and become a pediatric nurse, just like Maggie had been. "I want to help sick children, like you helped me," Hope told her mother. Maggie, now 84 and moving a bit slower than she used to, couldn't have been prouder. Hope had grown into an extraordinary young woman. She volunteered at the local animal shelter, organized food drives for the homeless, and was valedictorian of her graduating class. The night before graduation, Maggie and Hope sat on the porch swing that David had installed years earlier. The same porch where Maggie had felt that strange calling 17 years ago. "Mama," Hope said, "I want you to know something." "What's that, sweetheart?" I know that God led you to me that night, but I also think He led me to you. I couldn't have asked for a better mother." Maggie felt her heart swell with love and gratitude. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we saved each other." Hope graduated as valedictorian and received a full scholarship to nursing school. During her graduation speech, she told the story of how she was found in Pine Ridge Forest and how one woman's faith and courage had changed her life. "My mother taught me that miracles aren't just things that happen to us," Hope said to the crowd. "They're things we choose to be for other people. When we open our hearts and trust in something bigger than ourselves, we become part of God's plan to help others." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Jessica was there for the graduation, along with her family. She and Maggie had become friends over the years, bonded by their shared love for Hope. "Thank you," Jessica whispered to Maggie after the ceremony. "Thank you for giving her the life I couldn't. Thank you for giving me the daughter I never thought I'd have," Maggie replied. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video. And just like this story, I have another exciting story for you. Just click on the video on your screen. I'll be waiting for you.